So WrestleMania is only 1 month away, but it looks like Vince McMahon, the WWE Chairman, is still reportedly changing up the WrestleMania 37 card. Now, the WrestleMania 37 card is still very much up in the air. This is according to the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter. Now, it previously looked like the card was heading in a certain direction as we're on the road to WrestleMania, but reportedly Vince McMahon decided last week it needed to be bigger and is expected, quote, to blow up original ideas for the pay-per-view. Now, a few days ago, a rumoured list of matches was posted online. We'll touch on that in a second, but according to the new report, some of these matches may be changing or at least altering as we get closer to WrestleMania in the coming weeks. Now, in regards to Fastlane, which is of course only a couple of weeks away, the final pay-per-view before WrestleMania, nothing is being strongly pushed outside of the Universal Championship match of Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan and the recently announced WWE Women's Tag Team Champions Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler versus the Women's SmackDown Champion Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. As of recording right now, these are the only official matches for the pay-per-view. The report noted around McMahon, those around McMahon are expecting changes for Mania's lineup this coming week. Right now, the only official matches are Reigns defending against Edge for the Universal Championship and Banks facing Bianca Belair. So let's talk about the matches that have been rumoured, have been confirmed, and what is expected for WrestleMania. Then we'll touch on it. So, the confirmed matches, as I mentioned so far, is one for the Universal Championship. We've got WWE Hall of Famer and the winner of the 2021 Men's Royal Rumble match, Edge. He's going to be facing off against WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns for the championship. Also confirmed is the SmackDown Women's Championship match, as Bianca Belair, of course, the winner of the 2021 Women's Royal Rumble match, she's going to be facing off against the SmackDown Women's Champion Sasha Banks. Now, in terms of expected matches, we have a WWE Championship match where WWE Champion Bobby Lashley will be defending against Drew McIntyre, reportedly. We have Damian Priest and the WWE 24/7 champion Bad Bunny facing off against The Miz and John Morrison. Randy Orton and The Fiend Bray Wyatt will once again face off in likely a cinematic type matchup. We have the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, the WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal, and as far as in terms of rumoured matches on current storylines, it looks like it's going to be Shane McMahon versus Braun Strowman at WrestleMania, certainly after that weird Shane McMahon promo last night on Monday Night Raw. That looks like what we're going towards anyway. The Raw Women's Championship match looks to be Charlotte Flair versus Raw Women's Champion Asuka. The Women's Tag Team Championship match looks to be Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler defending against Lana and Naomi and another team to be announced. Possibly we're going to have a United States Championship match with Riddle defending against a superstar yet to be defined. A WWE Intercontinental Championship match where Big E will defend the Intercontinental Championship against Apollo Crews and possibly another superstar in a triple threat match. We're probably going to have a Raw Tag Team Championship match where the Hurt Business, the Raw Tag Team Champions Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin face off against a tag team to be announced. We're going to have a SmackDown Tag Team Championship match too, where the SmackDown Tag Team Champions Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler defend against a tag team to be announced, and likely a triple threat match which will see Seth Rollins versus Cesaro versus Daniel Bryan. As I mentioned, all of that is subject to change anyway, but certainly subject to change with Vince McMahon looking to change his mind about 10 million times in the next week or so as we head into WrestleMania. Now, in terms of Vince McMahon changing his mind when it comes to WrestleMania and WrestleMania season, that is nothing new. Even when things are completely normal and we're not currently in a pandemic or anything like that, Vince McMahon changes his mind when it comes to WrestleMania all the time. The days of having a WrestleMania card completely predefined around the Royal Rumble or anything like that kind of are gone. I know back in the day, and I know still sometimes with the big matches, with the tentpole matches, if you will, of that year's WrestleMania card, Vince McMahon will decide on them roughly around the Royal Rumble. That includes the likes of, Edge versus Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship or Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks. Apart from that, it really looks like we're not sure what we're getting. Now, I feel like with Damian Priest and Bad Bunny versus The Miz and John Morrison, that might as well be confirmed, especially now that The Miz dropped the WWE Championship, especially since all of this involvement with Bad Bunny, and that looks to be pretty much set in stone when it comes to even as far back as the Royal Rumble now. Bad Bunny's been training at the Performance Center, he's been taking bumps, he's getting ready for that match at WrestleMania. So that pretty much can go in the expected or the almost confirmed matches category there, can't it? When it comes to the WWE Championship, I know they're saying Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship. I think that's pretty expected. I think we definitely could see one more name added in there. If they can get a Brock Lesnar under contract, you can't tell me they might not go for a triple threat match. I mean, certainly it serves various purposes there, doesn't it? We get the Drew McIntyre Brock Lesnar match rematch from last year's WrestleMania, but we also kind of get the Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar dream match that we've always wanted to see. So I think that one, whilst it's expected, I still think we could see some alterations to that one. Randy Orton versus The Fiend Bray Wyatt. That to me always felt like it was going to happen at WrestleMania. I know that Dave Meltzer and some other people had shared some reports saying that initially the plan was to have The Fiend return at the Royal Rumble and they were going to have a cinematic match at the Royal Rumble and all that kind of stuff. Those plans, in my opinion, obviously changed a long, long time ago because Randy Orton was always confirmed for the Rumble, and especially that Edge was confirmed for the Rumble as well, and that Edge was going to be facing Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. It didn't, to me, make any sense to have The Fiend return in that match, or to have The Fiend face Randy Orton at the Royal Rumble event, because you needed to finish off the Edge-Randy Orton match. So I think they've handled that one very well. I know a lot of people are saying that they've dragged it out too long, and it's taken too long, and they're just waiting for The Fiend to come back. That's kind of the point. You know, I mentioned this before quite a few times recently because it's something that keeps rearing its head when it comes to talking about pro wrestling and talking about maybe things being dragged out too long, things being underwhelming, overwhelming, people being angry or happy with the product that they're watching at the time, is that pro wrestling's all about emotion. Pro wrestling's all about trying to get the audience to feel, trying to evoke an emotion. Now, I know sometimes that emotion can get you to turn off the television and stop you watching. That's not the emotion they're trying to get you to feel. But the feeling of, I can't wait for The Fiend to come back. Will he come back already? Can't he come back? That's called building anticipation. And that's what they're doing. And I said this all the way back to when The Fiend was set on fire back at TLC, that it's like The Undertaker. Whenever The Undertaker would get injured and they would do these big elaborate write-offs and he'd be written off of television, and then they would do the storyline about The Undertaker coming back and they would build it and hype it, and you're like, come on, when is he going to come back? We know he's going to come back, all that kind of stuff. But eventually when he did return, it was always great. It was always great, and it was always a moment. And people can talk about The Undertaker returns to this day. And I feel like The Fiend Bray Wyatt, eventually, whenever he does return, it's going to be a moment. And I think they've built that really well. You have to credit them when they get something right, and I feel like they have got that right. In terms of when The Fiend does return, when will that be? I don't know. I really don't know. I could see a scenario whereby, ironically, Bray Wyatt was involved in this, but where we don't see The Fiend return until WrestleMania. I mean, when Bray Wyatt faced off against The Undertaker at WrestleMania 31, right, remember, during that period of time, The Undertaker didn't appear at all during any of the build-up to that. Bray Wyatt built that match by himself. We had a little bit of confirmation that The Undertaker was going to be facing Bray Wyatt, but we didn't know what The Undertaker looked like. We hadn't heard from The Undertaker since he'd lost to Brock Lesnar the prior year at WrestleMania 30, and the undefeated streak ended and all that kind of stuff. We hadn't heard anything. And possibly that's going to be the situation here. I don't know if they're going to go with that. We could obviously see a scenario where Bray Wyatt, The Fiend, returns at possibly the Raw after Fastlane or something like that to really hype up the match at WrestleMania. Or, of course, we don't see anything when it comes to The Fiend, and he has his cinematic match against Randy Orton at WrestleMania. That's the big return. That's how they resurrect The Fiend. It is in this cinematic match form. I could see something like that as well. So that certainly is something to consider. But as far as confirmed matches, in the same way that Damian Priest and Bad Bunny versus The Miz and John Morrison is essentially confirmed, that's another one that's essentially confirmed. As far as the other matches, Shane McMahon versus Braun Strowman looks to be happening. I think pretty much that stuff, and I will call it stuff because what it was on Raw last night, I mean, I really have no idea. On Monday night, I really don't know, because that was Shane McMahon's promo, and by all accounts, Shane McMahon, multiple people have said this, you know, Brian Alvarez, Dave Meltzer, Sean Ross Sapp, everyone in the know when it comes to Shane McMahon's promo on Raw. I've pretty much said that was exactly how it was scripted. And if you haven't watched Raw this past week, I don't blame you. But if you haven't watched Raw this week, essentially, Braun Strowman demanded an apology for Shane McMahon after Shane McMahon called him stupid and an idiot last week and all that kind of stuff. Shane McMahon initially comes out and apologizes. He says, "I apologize," then leaves. Later on in the evening, Adam Pearce goes up to Shane McMahon backstage and says, like, "Was that it? Do you want to say anything else to Braun Strowman?" He goes, "You know what? Actually, I do. I'll say something else to Braun Strowman." So later on in the evening, Braun Strowman's in the ring, Shane McMahon's in the ring. Shane McMahon essentially runs away and pretends his microphone isn't working as soon as it's working, and he does it as a method to run away. And then he just goes on this rambling, weird promo where it felt like, most people watching it live, it felt like he's forgotten his lines. Like, he was obviously scripted to do this promo, and he's forgotten everything, and he's filling it. It felt like when you're doing an essay and you've got to get to, 200 more words, and you just don't have any more words left, and you're just typing weird stuff, nonsense. Honestly, it was nonsense. And then eventually kind of goes Braun, and essentially calls him stupid again, and Braun chases him to the back, and then it looks like Shane gets into the car and drives off, and so Braun Strowman leaves, but then it reveals that Shane wasn't in the car. It was just so convoluted and so stupid. But because of that storyline, we are going to get Shane McMahon versus Braun Strowman because it's WrestleMania, and Shane McMahon has to have his WrestleMania match. Vince McMahon has to see his son compete at WrestleMania. So we're going to get that match. I think Braun Strowman is going to probably destroy him. I mean, I really wouldn't mind it if we saw Shane lose in about 3 minutes. Kevin Owens must be fuming on SmackDown because back in 2019, right, the whole reason of having that feud with Shane McMahon and that ladder match on the debut episode of SmackDown on Fox was that Shane McMahon was fired and he's never going to come back again. Well, he came back, did Raw Underground, and now he's back being the heel Shane McMahon, which nobody wanted to see. Nobody wanted to see. At least when he was doing Raw Underground, it was like, well, at least it's not the best in the world Shane McMahon. That was just torturous to watch every Monday and Friday or Tuesday on SmackDown when it was on the USA Network. But it looks like we're getting back to that, which is a concern. Which is a concern because that was not good TV. That was so bad they had to write Shane McMahon off of TV and go in a completely different direction because it was that bad. You know, Kevin Owens would do shoot comments pretty much on the microphone that they would script for him, obviously, but they saw those comments because people on social media were saying, this is terrible. So, of course, WWE brings that back because that's what the people want, right? So that's what really was driving ratings at the time. So that looks like it's going to happen. Charlotte Flair versus Asuka. I mean, I'm assuming everyone thought that Charlotte Flair was going to be involved in the championship scene at WrestleMania because it's Charlotte Flair. In the same way that I mentioned that Shane McMahon's got to have his WrestleMania match, Charlotte Flair's got to have a championship match at WrestleMania. That's what she does. Go back to her first WrestleMania, WrestleMania 32, championship match. WrestleMania 33, championship match. WrestleMania 34, championship match. WrestleMania 35, championship match. WrestleMania 36, she couldn't be in the SmackDown or Raw Women's Championship match because they were filled, so she went after the NXT Women's Championship. She was in a championship match. Charlotte Flair, if it's WrestleMania, she's competing for the title. That's how they view her, that's how they book her. And she'll win. She'll win at WrestleMania because it's Charlotte Flair. She'll win the Raw Women's Championship because that's the story everyone wants to see. Everyone wants to see Charlotte Flair once again win the championship and get closer to her father's record. Again, I get it, and I'm not a Charlotte Flair hater by any means. I think some of the hate she gets on social media is not deserved at all. But I don't think it's her fault because WWE put her in the position. It's the same way that the hate that Roman Reigns used to get wasn't his fault. I mean, he can only do what he's told, and she can only do what she's told. What's she going to say? Oh yeah, don't book me in main events. Don't book me for the championship. Of course not. She's got to do what she's got to do. She gets paid to do it. It's just again, it's this forcing down the people's throat. And you would think after they saw the light when it came to Roman Reigns and they realized maybe we need to be a bit more subtle and let the character do what they want. Maybe we should do it a different way. They would do it something different with Charlotte, but no, it's ramming it down the throats. It's Charlotte's got to be involved in championship pitches and matches. Why? Because it's Charlotte Flair. And when it comes to the other matches, the Women's Tag Team Championship match, the United States Championship match, the Intercontinental title match, Raw Tag Team titles, SmackDown Tag Team titles, nothing there stands out to me. The only match that I saw on that list, and again, this list is very rough, and I do think it will change substantially between now and WrestleMania. The only thing that I saw and I went, that's going to be good, that's WrestleMania worthy, is Seth Rollins versus Cesaro versus Daniel Bryan. If that's given 20, 25, maybe even 30 minutes, maybe 30 minutes is probably a stretch, but certainly 20, 25 minutes on either night of WrestleMania, that will steal the show. That will steal the show on that night. Now, obviously, I think Edge versus Roman Reigns is probably going to become something quite special as well. And to be honest, Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley, if their Backlash match last year is anything to go on, it'll be a pretty decent match as well. But I think Rollins versus Cesaro versus Daniel Bryan, I mean, it's a wrestling purists and wrestling enthusiasts' dream match. It's going to be a spectacular match if that's the direction they go in, and if it is, man, talk about, they might as well make it for the Ring of Honor Pure Championship, right? It's so built in the annals of Ring of Honor history, isn't it? But it would be a fantastic match and certainly a match worthy for WrestleMania. That's, to me, that was my biggest takeaway when I saw this rumored card, is that it didn't feel like a WrestleMania. And I know it will feel like a WrestleMania once it's in the stadium and you've got the fans there and you've got the big set and the pyro and all that kind of stuff. But for me, when I think of WrestleMania matches, I think of matches that you couldn't see any other time of the year. And I know people are going to say, well, does that involve getting part-timers in? No, it doesn't. It doesn't involve getting part-timers in. It involves saving your biggest and best matches for WrestleMania, and it doesn't feel like that. I mean, Edge versus Roman Reigns, that's a WrestleMania match. Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks, to me, that's a WrestleMania match because you're elevating a new star. Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley, I'm not going to say it's not a WrestleMania match. I think it is. I think it is because I don't want to be that person that's getting just part-timers in or anything like that. I think given the match we saw at Backlash and given the booking of Bobby Lashley and elevating Drew McIntyre as a top babyface in WWE, that can be a WrestleMania match. Other matches, though, Shane McMahon versus Braun Strowman, it does nothing for me. Charlotte Flair versus Asuka, it will be a great match, but we saw it. We saw it at WrestleMania 34. That was 3 years ago. Have either evolved that much since then? Asuka has. I don't think Charlotte Flair necessarily has. It'll be a good match, but we've seen it. It doesn't feel new. The Women's Tag Team titles being a triple threat match, is that a WrestleMania match? Not really. Riddle versus whoever it will be. If it's Riddle versus someone like Mustafa Ali, I mean, I'll credit them for them putting it on WrestleMania and hopefully maybe putting over Riddle in the process, but... Or maybe, actually, I'd rather have Mustafa Ali, to be honest, win that match. But again, does it feel like a WrestleMania match? I mean, all of those matches, again, it doesn't feel big. It doesn't feel big. And maybe that's what the report says when it comes to Vince McMahon. I mean, we criticise him. Maybe that's the case with Vince. Maybe he looks at that and says, look, that doesn't feel that different to any other pay-per-view we could do at any other time. We need to do something bigger. How do we do that? Well, WWE have shot themselves in the foot when it comes to that because they can't do much bigger because they haven't been creating stars over the course of the last 5 years or so. If they actually created stars and didn't heavily focus and rely on these part-timers so much, they would actually have mega stars available to them all of the time, and they don't have that right now. So maybe it takes a card like this. Maybe it takes a card like this to actually make and elevate some stars, and then when it comes to WrestleMania next year, it will feel bigger and bigger. Maybe this is a WrestleMania that is more about investing for the future. I don't know, but it certainly is going to be interesting. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Vince McMahon reportedly still changing WrestleMania 37 plans and the rumoured card that we spoke about in this video? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, get up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.